Welcome to this session about Power Platform governance capabilities. My name is Julie Strauss. I'm the PM Director for the Power Platform, and my team is focused on the pro developer and admin capabilities on the Power Platform. The agenda is pretty packed today. We will start off by talking a little bit about the Power Platform and the business opportunity from an IT perspective, and then we'll move into how you can support innovation and growth. And then as part of that conversation, we will also cover some of the new capabilities that we will be releasing. If any of you are new, has all of you of the Power Platform, we have Power BI for dashboarding and visualizations and reporting. And then we have Power Apps for low-code, no-code application creation, Power Automate for workflow automation, both cloud flows and desktop flows. And then we have Power Virtual Agent for bot creation. So these are really the main services, but then we have some supporting services that we are going to focus on today as well. We have AI Builder for infusing intelligence into applications and flows. And then we have Dataverse, which is really two things. It is the physical storage under the data platform, as well as a lot of business logic and security that you can benefit from when using a low-code system. And then finally, we have data connectors, which is really important in this conversation around security and governance, because this is where you're accessing external data, which is really where you want to create your guardrails. So just zooming out a little bit, these are really the four areas of the platform we will be zeroing in on in this particular session. Now, the Power Platform have had a significant amount of growth during the past couple of years. You can see that 97% of the Fortune 500 are using the Power Platform. And we have billions of Power Automate actions running daily. What I really like a lot is the growth in production apps that has seen an increase the last year for more than 700%. So you can ask yourself, why is that? Well, we do see changes in the workforce with the millennials being so used to creating their own technology and apps and flows. And there is just a huge surge in digital demands where so many companies have a budget for digital transformation. And there's a long tail of applications, like thousands of business processes that can be digitalized using a low-code platform. And that obviously leads us into the low developer availability. There simply is a shortage of developers. And that really puts pressure on the whole system. And so for many companies, the digital transformation really is no longer optional. It is a requirement for many organizations to thrive. And that is interesting when we're looking at the Power Platform. As you may all know, we started really focusing on the citizen developers. But in the last year, we really amped up the investments we are doing, both for pro developers as well as IT developers. So for those of you in IT. And looking at our customer base, we have a large set of enterprises really scaling the adoption of the Power Platform. And key for these companies are really two things. They are embracing fusion teams. And fusion teams can be pro developers and citizen developers working together, but it can also be IT pros working with the business to create guardrails for the business. But it's also a change in mindset where we are moving from this notion of we must try and prevent things from happening to really opening up and supporting the business in driving this digital transformation, creating guardrails. So the key here is really for all of these companies, they are collaborating. IT is collaborating with the business to support innovation and growth. So for you, if you're sitting in an IT department, your opportunity with the Power Platform is really to help empower the business by creating these guardrails that will allow the users in the business to build apps and flows in a secure, compliant, and scalable manner. So again, stepping back a little bit before we dive into all the features, looking at the platform at all, it is running on Azure. So it really is a fully hyperscale enterprise-grade infrastructure. And we have more data centers than both AWS and Google together. So also another effort that we are working on is really being global by default, meaning as we stand up new features, etc., we are committed to making sure that they light up in all data centers. within 90 days. So that is going to be a huge investment area for us moving forward as well. And stepping back a little bit, these are all of the capabilities that top of mind that we have been releasing in the last year. And there's a lot. There's everything from the unified admin center. Instead of having 3 separate admin centers or 4, we now have a single one for the Power Platform Admin Center. We have invested in API reporting, which I know has been top of mind for many. We have invested in our data loss prevention policies, first allowing you to block connectors, which wasn't previously possible, but also now we are giving you yet another layer of granularity to those connectors, which is what we will be spending time on today. But sometimes we get lost in the number of features. So I wanted to step back a little bit and provide a picture for how you can think about your role in collaboration with the business before you start even using all of these capabilities. So here's kind of a journey between business and IT. And the IT really starts with setting up the guardrails, setting up the security foundation. And we will walk through in a second what that really means. Now, once you have the foundation, then you can start to let the users create applications. As they create applications, you can start monitoring them using our analytical capabilities. And then the journey kind of goes from there. They start adding more and more applications. You can start managing, putting automated application lifecycle management in place, and you can start to take requests from applications. And then finally, going the full circle, start to think about tenant hygiene and how you make sure you retire unused components, apps, and flows, etc. So that's really the full journey end to end. So if we take a deeper look into the capabilities very specifically designed to help you in IT, we are talking about security, monitoring, and management. So first starting with security. First up, we talk about integration with Azure Active Directory. Like we have the tenant-wide access there where you can do conditional access policies, etc. Full integration with Azure Active Directory. We also have environment access where you can decide who can provision environments, who can be admins within an environment, and who can create applications and flows. And then we have resource level where you can specify which users can access which apps and flows. Then we get to the data layer, where first we have Dataverse data access, which is a super powerful security layer where you can secure at table level all the way down to field and cell level. So there we typically don't see a lot of concerns, but then we have external data sources where we have more than 450 external data sources that we provide access to out of the box. And this is really where a lot of IT departments are spending quite a lot of energy setting up the data loss prevention policies to harness that power. So with that, I want to spend a little bit of time here in what we think of as environment strategies, because the environment and how you set that up is really what allows you to monitor and control which users can access which data sources, etc. And we really think of them in 2 angles. There is the criticalness for the business and the time they're going to live. So if you look at the green zone, that's really our default environment where we say, it is not really designed for production apps, but it is allowed for users to be creative, to build applications, and you can set up data loss prevention policies accordingly. But you want to monitor this environment, and as applications grow or flows grow in usage and importance, they move into yellow zone, where you may say, look, this application grew overnight and it now has 800 active users. Let's move it into a dedicated environment where we can have proper application lifecycle management around it, so we can move between dev, test, and prod as changes are being updated. And then finally, we have kind of the fully dedicated environments, which is really applications that live for a long time and are critical for the business. These you might have fully managed by IT. So you see these different grades, which will really allow you to harness as well the data that are accessible to these environments, as well as the guardrails that you put around them. And talking about the data guardrails, I want to move into the data loss prevention policies. We have 3 categories that you can use for defining or classifying connector. business, which is really intended for sensitive data that you use for your business. And connectors in this category can only be used with other data sources in that same category. Then we have non-business, which is for non-sensitive data, that are data sources that you don't want to use in apps created where you're also using the business data. And then finally, we have blocked, which was the ability we added maybe 12 months ago now, where you have the ability to completely block connectors from usage, either at tenant level or in a given environment. Now with that, I want to move into look at what's coming, or what we are literally just releasing anytime now. So we have connector action controls, endpoint filtering, and tenant isolation. So let's dig in here a little bit. Connector action controls are really designed to give you fine-grained control over specific actions within a connector that you can either allow or disallow. And I'll show you a demo in a little bit where we will dig in deeper. But this is really an important capability to allow you to maybe revisit some of the connectors that you have blocked because you find them risky. By blocking certain actions, like read actions, you have potentially the ability to now enable these connectors for business use cases. The next one, capability is endpoint filtering. This is really about allowing you fine-grained control over specific instances of, for example, SQL Server that users can access. Historically, it's been very binary. Either an environment can access SQL Server, or the SQL servers they have access to, they can use or not. But with endpoint filtering, we are allowing the IT administrator to specify specific SQL instances within that environment that users may or may not even access. We'll cover that in the demo as well. And last is tenant isolation for data exfiltration. And this is really an interesting feature if you're in a multi-tenant architecture, where, for example, you might have subsidiaries that have their own tenant. You do want very often departments to connect with data across there, but you don't want any tenant to have access. So with the tenant isolation, you can very explicitly define which tenant outside your current tenant do you allow data to and from. So with that, let's move into the demo. So I'm in the Power Platform Admin Center, where I am in the data policies area, and I've already set up a policy for the marketing environment that I'm going to be using. Now note, very often you would set up more generic data loss prevention policies where you have, for example, broader groups for low risk or high risk environments, which is a little bit more scalable approach. But for the sake of this demo, I created a dedicated policy for the marketing department, which also obviously happens in many cases. So if we take a look at the connector action controls, I like to use Twitter for demonstrating the value of the connector action controls, because it is a highly valuable connector for the business that allows them to get a sense of sentiment for their product. But IT tends to be less comfortable with it because there is this risk that a user accidentally posts company data to this public service. So, but with connector action controls, I can actually start controlling what users can do within a connector. So you see I have here all the different actions that I can control. And I have post a tweet and retweet, which is really the actions that are considered high risk. So what I can do is simply use the radio buttons to disallow these two actions. Now users can still get followers, get following, get my followers, etc., meaning that they can retrieve data from Twitter, but I can't post back, so I can save it. And now I really transform this from being a risky to a non-risky connector that really only can extract data from Twitter. So I should feel comfortable now moving that into the business category. And that's really why I find connector action controls so powerful, because it allows you to revisit some of the connectors you might have blocked because you consider them risky, and now move them to be part of the digital journey within your organization. And now I would go ahead and apply the policies to this environment. Now, the next capability we want to take a look at is the endpoint filtering. So I can go into the same environment or policy, and I will find the HTTP connector. There, and I will choose to configure connector endpoint. So by default, you will see that I have the action set to allow for all endpoint, and I'll keep that as. What I will do, I will add another endpoint, and I will deny, for example, access to google.com. I'm starting it with a star so that this rule will apply regardless of whether I use the HTTP or HTTPS protocol, and I'm adding a star in the end to make sure that the rule applies for all sites under the domain. So now I can access all websites apart from Google, and I can go ahead and save that policy. And I will deselect the connector, and I will go through and update the policy to make sure it's applied. Now with that, let's move into Power Automate to test out this connector, and I'll go and very quickly create an instant flow. I will add a connector, and I will search for my HTTP connector. And all I will do is do a simple get, and I will add and at doodle.com, and I will save. And now that you'll see that my flow has saved, meaning I haven't wasted any work, but it could not be enabled because it conflicts with one of my data loss prevention policies. So that's exactly what I want. So now in this environment, marketing can use and connect to all HTTP endpoints apart from Google. So again, a very powerful control to determine what users can or cannot do to kind of manage your risk in this environment. Last capability I want to touch on here is tenant isolation. And you can see I can turn tenant isolation on very easily with a click of a button. And now I can go and define my different tenant roles. So essentially, I can define the direction for where I want to allow or disallow my users to establish a connection. So I can choose inbound, which essentially means that no external tenants can connect to my tenant. Outbound, the other way around, I cannot reach out to other tenants, or I can decide to do it both inbound and outbound, and I can simply define the tenant domain or the ID. So again, a very powerful feature that you have available within a few clicks here in the Power Platform Admin Center. So hopefully that gave you a view of how you can configure some of these capabilities and how you can apply them to your environment to open up for the usage in a safe manner when working with the Power Platform. Okay, coming back, let's look at monitoring. And monitoring is really an important part of your reactive governance strategy, where you pay attention to what users are doing. So we have new investments here. One is tenant-wide out-of-the-box report. And we also have a pipeline in private preview right now that we will soon be releasing to public preview, which allows you to take telemetry data and export into Azure Data Lake for inventory analysis and your own ad hoc analysis, as well as export troubleshooting and diagnostic logs into App Insights for further performance monitoring. But looking at the tenant-wide applications, that is really a feature that has been highly requested by many of you. We have environment-specific reports and have it for a long time, which is super powerful when you want to allow environment administrators to govern the use in their environment. But with tenant-wide applications, or the tenant-wide analytics, you are able to have a single view of app and flow activity across your entire tenant. So with that, let's move into the demo to demonstrate what this tenant-wide report look like. So we have 3 different tabs. We have Maker Activity, where you can see active apps, newly created apps, active makers as well as top makers. So you would use that to essentially determine which makers to go nurture and train and educate, etc., and potentially how to create a community. Then we have the usage tab, which I'm in now, where you can see all usage across all your environments. So you have the total unique number of users and new users. These actually happen to be the same because it's a new report. And then you can also see the apps being used and total number and environments. And you can see them here in a heat map as well, which you can obviously span out so you have better visibility into the different environments. If I go back into the report, you will also see that I have a range of filters over here where I can filter into the different environment type. Let's say I only want to look at trials or only want to look at production. And I have regions and look at each individual tenants or environment, so I can drill down and get very specific, as well as filter across the different app types. But most importantly, which is what I think what most of you will be looking for, is top apps by the number of users or active users. This is really where you identify these fast-growing applications that you want to pay attention to. So either because you want to put specific guardrails in place, or because you might want to say, if an app is growing very fast and it could be in the default environment, maybe you want to take that and move it into a dedicated environment where you can do a fully automated application lifecycle and take it through dev, test, prod, etc. So really follow your overall business processes as app grows in importance for the business. So with that is a quick view, but again, high value here is really for you in a single glance to be able to spot growth in either makers or apps or flows. I'm showing this for Power Apps, but it will be available as well for Power Automate. So very, very excited about these tenant-wide reports. Now let's move into the last stanza, which is really about management. So for management, first off, a year ago, more or less, we started the journey to really consolidate into a single admin center. So we took the Power Automate Admin Center, Power Apps Admin Center, and the Admin Center for Dynamics 365, and unified it into a single admin center for Power Platform. It is important for you guys because you only have one place to go, but also we have a single place where we can really amp up our investments. One of the newest capabilities we have released is API reporting, which has been highly requested. So now if you go into resources, you will be able to see your usage, your API usage, as well as you will have downloadable reports. And last, we have integration with GitHub. So we have invested in integration with Git Actions. We also have integration with Azure DevOps, which really allows you to create a fully automatable application lifecycle. Along with that Git integration or Git action integration, we also have released a Git connector. And what is really interesting with that is we also have created a Canvas app as part of the toolkit that will allow you to empower your users to use a Canvas app to actually request new environments. And you can operationalize that application lifecycle management through this Canvas app. So a user can take an app from test to dev to prod simply by using this Canvas app. So it's very exciting. It is in the toolkit, and there you see a view of that application. So with that, we have gone through the full journey of the capabilities that are available to you through security, monitoring, and management, as well as the new features that we have released. Now that you have a little bit better insight into that, I created a last slide which has much more details of the different steps that you can involve the users in throughout the journey. And you can go out to the Center of Excellence Toolkit. There are examples of all of that out there that you can take advantage of. That includes the templates for welcome emails, the app, catalog app, etc., that will just help you get a better feel for the entire flow and help you jumpstart that process. So with that, we encourage you to go and take a look at the documentation, engage with us, join us, the expert. I thank you so much for listening to the session. Thank you.